When I got a call from a friend saying they needed some work done on an electric trimmer, I was very curious as to what the problem was, but when they told me what it was, I wasn't sure what to make of the whole situation. They needed me to replace the trimmer head with a universal one, but I wasn't sure why they didn't want to do it themselves. However, once I got the trimmer home and I got a good look at it, I soon realized why they wanted me to do it, and I might be over my head on this one. In today's video, we're going to be looking at this GreenWorks battery electric trimmer, and the problem is that the trimmer head needs to be replaced. However, it's not as cut and dry as it might seem. Now, you might be thinking, oh, it's easy to replace the trimmer head, but when dealing with electric stuff, things get a bit interesting, and that's because of their design. Now, I'm going to try and repair this trimmer, but yours might be different, so this might not work on yours. So if things are not working out for you, like in the video, please ask about it. I'll be glad to answer your questions. Now, this is my first experience with what you would call a more conventional electric trimmer, and not the kids' toys I've used in the past. And what I mean by that is that it has to do with the substantial battery on this one. Just listen to what real silent power sounds like. Well, I'm not sure if you would call that silent, but maybe more of a whine than anything else. Now, I'm in no way saying that these are any less effective than a conventional gas trimmer, but the sensations you get while using one are certainly a bit lacking in comparison. Now, you can see the problem this one has. The bump head is completely worn away, probably from making excessive contact with the concrete. But I also have a feeling the plastics they use for these machines are a bit softer than they should be. Now, obviously, I could just start to work on this trimmer and not worry about how gross it looks, but to be honest, I really don't want to touch it until I get all this dirt and old grass off the body. Of course, since this is an electric trimmer, I'm not going to use any water on it, so I guess I'm going to have to wash it by hand, which to be honest, was not very fun to do. Now, the other option would be to remove the plastics off the trimmer and then use my regular method to clean it, which is what I ended up doing later on off camera. Of course, there's no effect on the cooling of the engine with the dirt and grass on the body, but a little bit of pride never hurt anyone. Once I get the majority of the dirt and grass off the plastics, I'll then start to take it apart so that I can see how this trimmer really works. Now, you have to be asking yourself, why are you taking this trimmer apart? And the answer will be very clear here in a bit, and you're going to see why these electric trimmers were not meant to be kept for a long time. Which brings up the biggest problem I have with these, which is the perceived usefulness over time. Now, for a gasoline trimmer, they expect the parts to wear out faster than the engine, so they have those parts ready to be replaced. However, that doesn't seem to be the issue with some of these electric ones. So on most gasoline trimmers, there's a way to lock the drive shaft on the gearbox and then you can remove the trimmer head, but I was not able to find a way to do that on this particular GreenWorks model. Now, I did download the owner's manual and read through it, and unless I missed something, I do believe there was no way to change the trimmer head, at least not easily. And what that meant for me was exploratory surgery, and what I found out pretty much backs what I found in the owner's manual. There's no easy way to remove the trimmer head. Knowing what I know now, I could have stopped right here to lock the motor and remove the trimmer head, but curiosity got the better of me, and I wanted to see everything inside it, which was pretty amazing. The first step, at least for me, was to remove the retaining clip off the end of the shaft. After that, I'll then need to use some locking pliers on the shaft of the electric motor, which will keep it from spinning when I try to remove the trimmer head. Now, you can try to jam the gears with a towel to do the same thing, but just be very careful because the larger gear is made out of the cheapest plastic you could think of. After locking the shaft on the motor, just brace it against the table and then turn the trimmer head counterclockwise to remove it. I don't know why they didn't make it a lot easier to lock the engine from spinning so that you're able to remove the trimmer head, but I have at least one idea, and it's not a good one either. Now, after removing the trimmer head, just be very careful not to lose this spacer unless that's part of your plans, but for me, I intend on reusing it. So this nut is what was in the original trimmer head, and that's what threaded onto the shaft. Now, this is important because we'll need to use it to help figure out what the size and pitch of the shaft is to help us figure out which of the adapters we need to use. So it turns out this shaft is an M10 with a pitch of 1.25, which I do believe after some research is one of the adapters in the kit. Now, I bought this universal trimmer head at my local hardware store, but a lot of the universal ones that look just like this one should also be the same as far as the adapters go, which is the biggest concern when getting one of these. Now, here's the big problem. As you just saw on the list of trimmers on the back of this package, GreenWorks is not on there, but why? Well, at first I thought it was an issue of missing hardware, but I think the reason is more of a design issue on the part of GreenWorks, and that's because of what you've already seen me do. I think the main reason why is because GreenWorks doesn't want you, the consumer, to be able to replace the entire trimmer head, at least on this particular model. The reason I can't say this is a general fact is because this is the only model I've ever worked on from them. Now, the more conventional designs where the motor is not at the end of the shaft but instead at the back of the trimmer should have a regular gearbox that should accept a new trimmer head a lot easier. So here is the new head, and as you can see, it's an easy load style, meaning you don't have to take it apart to load it. Just push in your line and make sure there's the same length on either side of the trimmer head and then start turning the bump head. Of course you have to open it to install it, but hopefully this will be the last time you have to see the inside of it. So these are all the new parts that came with the new trimmer head, and to be honest, this always felt like some sort of aptitude test to me. And that's because you now have to figure out which parts you need and which parts you don't, and if you get it wrong, well, you're going to find out real quick. So right off the bat, we can get rid of all the adapters that are bolts because the part we need is of course some sort of nut. Now this gold adapter is not a bolt, but it's also not a nut, so it's not what we need either. And that just leaves us with these nuts that are two different sizes and are either right hand thread or left hand thread. Now all we have to do is pick the right adapter and then follow the instructions to install the new head, but it's not going to go quite as easily as I was hoping for. So the nuts are either the smaller M8 or the larger M10, and of course for this application we'll need the larger one. And after looking at all of them and testing them with my tab that I already know fits the original nut that came off the trimmer, it looks like I'm going to be using the number 4 adapter. Now I still ran my tab through the nut just to make sure there were no machining issues with it, and after that we should be ready to install the new trimmer head. What we need to do now is to put the number 4 nut into the base of the head and make sure that you put it in the correct way because you can put it in upside down. The smaller part of the nut is supposed to pass through the base, and then you'll need to use either the spacer or the washer to make up for any differences, but there's one small problem. Neither part alone or even adding them both together is going to make up for the difference between where the stock spacer stops and where the threads end on the shaft. And what that means is we're going to need to make up for the difference with either another spacer or a whole bunch of washers, which is not what I want to use. So instead, I'm going to use a rather large nut to take up the space. The reason why is because the shaft diameter is not a typical size, so finding a better looking spacer is going to take a lot of time, which I don't have. The inside diameter of the nut was within 10,000ths of an inch of the shaft's outside diameter, so it couldn't have been a better fit. And its overall length worked out to be perfect as well. Yes, it is a bit redneck, but I've been working really hard on my tan, so I think it's only fitting. And after spinning on the base along with the correct adapter, I'll then replace all those cheap plastic parts along with those tiny screws back onto the machine. If the manufacturer had made an access cover to get to the top of the motor, that would have kept me from taking it apart as much as I did. But then again, I'm pretty sure by the way this was designed, when the trimmer head gets worn down enough, they wanted you to just buy a new machine instead, which sounds like terrible marketing to me, so why would they even bother doing that? So here's my take on why that's a big problem for them. Let's say you bought this trimmer at the beginning of the season and you're quite good at researching on how to take care of your battery, that way you won't have any issues with it the next season. But after 2 years, the problem isn't with the battery, but instead with the machine itself. Now most likely the bump head will need to be replaced, but you're in luck because this part is easily found and cheap. But unfortunately you also need to replace the trimmer head because it seems to be wearing faster than expected. Now you're in for a huge nightmare because they are not making this part available for replacement only. And that's because they'll make more money when they sell the trimmer head with the rest of the new machine and not just the part itself. And this strategy works for the most part. You will get plenty of people coming back to buy a new trimmer without the battery and charger, and your sales will go up. But there's a huge problem with that strategy. If the consumer has to buy a new trimmer, they might use this opportunity to buy a different one from a competitor. So why in the world would they risk this scenario then in the first place? Simple, they don't care to keep the consumers they have right now, but they're trying to get new ones instead. Now that we've got the new trimmer head installed and the lines cut to length, I think it's time to try it out and see if it's going to work or not. Now I think there's something going on with the line and the line cutter on the guard, but let's try it out and see what happens anyway. Now, as you can hear, it would seem that the line is too long and hitting the plastic guard. However, if we take a closer look, it would seem that the line is in fact not in the same plane as the cutter, so it's missing it. So it seems that the original trimmer line plane was a lot closer to the motor, but on this one, it moves it further away from it. Now, it's not a big deal. I'll just put some thick spacers under the cutter and that should take care of it. Now, to be honest, I kind of like using this electric trimmer. It has a lot of power and is very easy to use, even when considering how heavy the battery is. But that's never been the complaint I have with battery electric trimmers. I find the good ones to be too expensive, and if not taken care of, will lose battery capacity over a short time. That means an expensive replacement part or a complete replacement of the entire trimmer, which doesn't sound very environmentally sound to me. Now, as far as getting parts for these electric trimmers, well, you can probably guess how I feel about that after having worked on this trimmer. So my question is, after seeing what I had to go through, are you willing to go through it too? And personally, for me, if I had a choice, the answer would be no. I do not want to do it again. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.